important point to discuss today.
I can say something on that.
Okay, let's start. So Nina or Chanti, please go ahead.
Yeah, Chanti had important point. I know.
Good morning, everyone. I posted on DSG, but I'll read it again. It's from a recording of 2014. And then Ajahn says, let me take it at the right moment. At the moment of experiencing, it conditions the experiencing of reality, which is just a little difference, unnoticeable if it is not panya. So I understand this, that it's unnoticeable, the difference, if it were not for panya to understand. And I'd like to hear more about it. And I wrote on DSG that it seems very important, first of all, because I deduce from it that the difference is not for self. So it's a good remembrance for no thing, no self. And it's not a special experience to try to get, but also because it's not noticeable, we wouldn't know in daily life, would we, when these moments appear? So, well, I'd just like to hear more about the experiencing of reality is just a little difference, unnoticeable.
Auntie. Hello, can you hear me? I think what Ajahn referring to there is that when there is a moment of awareness and understanding, it can and usually may be quite weak understanding, weak awareness and understanding. So it can be actually unnoticeable or only just noticeable. And if it's noticed, it would be panya that notices it. So there can be awareness without it being noticed, because it has to develop from a very low, weak level. When it becomes a little bit more developed, then it becomes noticeable to panya.
Yes,
But
and
not always.
She was talking a long discourse, but this went over very fast. So I'd like you to pause on it, to say this again and again. Could you? What you just said?
Sure. Is there any particular aspect of that? Because when we hear, for example, but not necessarily all the time, but when we are hearing a description of the way things are in reality, as explained by the Buddha, as taught by the Buddha and as explained by someone like Ajahn, for example, and there is considering at the time of what is being said, and there may be conditions for weak awareness and understanding to arise, some moments of. But at first, the difference between the moments with awareness and without awareness may not be readily apparent. And so it's like the simile of the adze handle, that it's not possible to say on a day-to-day basis, so much has been understood today and so much was understood the day before. But after a period of time, it's possible to discern that there is some level of understanding of realities that wasn't there before, and not just that an understanding that is not just does not just come about by repeating the words, but is more deeply embedded than that.
It seems so important because this sentence that it is unnoticeable, but it may be there.
Yes.
I
agree it's important because
yeah,
we incline to be looking all the time for the evidence,
for
the moments of awareness and why aren't they happening sort of thing. So it helps us to be patient and to have confidence that the right cause will lead to the right result. So if the conditions are there for the development of understanding, then understanding will develop, regardless of whether it's happening in a way that we might have expected or not.
Yes, and I cannot explain why it gives me great confidence, this little sentence, but it makes it very obvious that all the practices, all the trying, all the meditating, all the trying to be kind or have concentration or have calm, they can't be it because they're noticeable. Right. And it is unnoticeable. Yeah. Thank you. So if anyone, Sarah, also, you can stay on this bit. The experiencing of reality is just a little different, unnoticeable. And
what is meant is the experiencing with understanding, because it's so little in the beginning, because there's experiencing at every moment. Seeing is experiencing, hearing is experiencing, but this is referring to the experiencing of understanding is so little and so slight. It's unnoticed, like as Jonathan said, the wearing away of the adze handle. And the point of stressing it is because otherwise, a bit like Nina brought up last time, people become discouraged, or else there is clinging to having understanding or to seeing it. But the point of stressing that it's so little and so gradual is to accept that's how it is. It can't be any other way. No point in clinging, no point in being discouraged, because it takes its course little by little, and there can be confidence that it's working its way and the effect is there. And as you said, the point is it's not for self, it's not anyone's understanding. It has to just develop very naturally. No one can hasten it, no one can make it arise, no one can speed it up. It just develops naturally by its own conditions.
Yeah, this
thank you.
Reminds me of the sutta about the adze handle, you know, the thing that planes, flattens wood. And, you know, you can use this tool every day for days and days and days and never notice that the handle's wearing down. And then one day you notice that the handle has worn down. And it's the same thing. There are so many days or so many moments in which understanding, or even a little tiny weak understanding, is not noticed, and then one day the conditions are there to notice it much further. So that's why they compare that to the noticing of the handle of that tool wearing down.
Yes, but also very often Ajahn, for example, asks, well, is there seeing now or hearing now? And we think we know that they're seeing, but we don't. So this word unnoticeable, it helps a lot. I'm happy to hear it again and again. And also thinking about the Mulapariyaya Sutta now, the ignorant, like me, person sees earth as earth and fire as fire. But then if we take it further, the Arahat also sees that as that, but with the noticeable difference then?
Yes, because with a noticeable difference. I remember each time they say he understands what they really are. So he's not attached to them. He doesn't either like or dislike them. He has, in other words, he has upekkha toward that thing. He knows that it is impermanent. He knows that it is dukkha, and he knows that it is anatta. So when knowing those things, he can look at the thing, whatever the whatever the panyati object is, whatever the concept object is, and he can not be attached to it. He don't, and this is the root of our problem, because we look at all this stuff. Here I have on the desk, here I have a computer, I have a pen, I have a pad, I got a phone, I got this, I got all these conceptual panyati objects, okay? And because we forget all the time, like 99.9% of the time, that these are not real. They are just these panyati objects with shape and form. We don't realize that we think that here's a pen, okay? Or we think this pen is pretty everlasting, but every nano moment is different. And the realities that are present are different. So this within nanoseconds, or however you want to measure it, it's impossible to measure. It's going to have arisen and fallen away.
Betty, could I just add something here? Well, the object of the arahat's understanding is not the pen.
Exactly.
Not the conventional object.
Absolutely.
And it's not the conventional object that arises and falls.
That's away. Right. But what she's saying is that he recognizes it, he sees it, he says, yes, that thing is a pen, but he knows it for what it really is. It's not.
Not really. No. He doesn't know the pen for what
John,
it really
if he
is.
didn't see it that way, how come when we hear the suttas, he can recognize this person, he can recognize that person, and so forth and so on, okay? So he can see a pen as a pen, but he knows what it really is, okay?
I haven't checked the Pali, but I was thinking, why doesn't it say he sees earth as Patavi, and he sees fire as Tejo, and he sees water as Apo?
Let's just consider the word sees first of all. Let's use the word experiences, because sees suggests understanding. So no matter whether it's a worldling or the arahat, at the moment of seeing, it is visible object that is seen, that is experienced. At the moment of touching, it is hardness that is experienced. So in the case of the worldling, nothing is seen or understood. So hardness is experienced, but instantly it's taken for something. It's taken for a pen, it's taken for a computer, it's taken for something. But in fact, it's just patawi, it's just hardness that is experienced, but not understood. So the world of touching at this moment, what is touch is just hardness. For the Aryan disciple, there's no confusion, there's no doubt at all that what is touched is just patawi. So even though he uses the words computer and pen, there's no misunderstanding that what is experienced is just hardness. But for the worldling, nothing is seen, nothing is realized, nothing is understood. So even though hardness now is just touched, or sound now is just heard, there is the idea of something or someone that is heard. My voice, someone else's voice, these words, and what is touched. There is the idea it is the thing that is touched, a computer or a pen, but actually it's only hardness that is touched. So this is what the sutta is all about. And that's why I mentioned it's what we discuss all the time. It's about the reality which is experienced right now. So it is experienced no matter whether there's any understanding or no understanding. The world is exactly the same, but usually there's ignorance and no understanding. So the world doesn't change. What is experienced doesn't change. It's just the understanding that develops. to eradicate all wrong view and ignorance.
Yes, and there's again then this experiencing for the arahata is a direct experience and directly knowing. And for the ignorant, it's a different verb which helps perceiving. They don't say knowing, it's perceiving. And it's
just could discuss these words a moment. So the experiencing is what occurs at every moment in life, no matter for the worldling or the arahat. There is experience at every moment. The knowing is when panya arises and knows what is experienced. Perceiving, usually we use as referring to the function of sanya, which perceives, which recognizes what's experienced, no matter with ignorance or with understanding. So for the worldling of the arahat, there is the marking and remembering and perceiving at every moment. So there's always experiencing, there's always perceiving or recognizing, but the knowing is the function of panya. So it depends whether it arises or not.
Yes, and this is the little difference, the unnoticeable and the natural thing about it, isn't it? I mean, we don't have to see atoms.
Right.
So the panya develops naturally. That's why we discuss about what is experienced now, just hardness, so that there can be the considering and reflecting, which is the beginning of the pariyati understanding, beginning to understand that it's not how it's always seemed. And it is that panya that develops naturally and gradually, not by anyone doing anything at all. And that's why I said it's now. It's at this very moment.
And coming back to the line I posted, Jan said, no word like nama is necessary because the characteristic of experiencing, which is then nama, is there to be learned to know that it experiences. And my question is that then at this stage the only characteristic that we can distinguish that it experiences?
Well, not the only aspect of characteristic, no. It depends on many factors, which aspect of the present moment reality will be apparent to awareness and understanding. So it could be the fact that it's a reality that has the characteristic of experiencing, what we call a nama, or it could be something to do with the unique characteristic of the particular reality, or it could be one of the three characteristics that are common to all realities. So there are many aspects of the true nature of the present moment reality that can be attended to by awareness and understanding.
And also, Chanti, I think you'd recall that the discussion some time ago about how it seems like there's just the rupa.
Score. It's not on the screen at the moment.
Hello. Yeah, Chanti, you might recall this discussion, which was in one of the Zoom sessions about
what you talking.
Hello.
Go on.
Sorry, are you getting some interference?
Hello.
I'm not getting. I can hear you clearly, Sukin. Please continue.
Okay. I'll continue. No, what I'm saying is that Chanti, you might recall that there has been discussion about how one does not think about the experiencing, like the chitta in a day. It's because one is so involved in the objects of experience. So as you've also probably heard about the sense door, right now it seems like the sense door is covering the mind door. because it seems all about things and sound, the world of sounds, the world of a visible object and all that. So the experiencing, which of course in this case Achan was referring to the chitta, not the chetasikas, you'll see that it is mostly we are involved in the rupas that's being experienced. There's no thought about that which experiences in a day.
Yes, thank you, Suki.
And the point about nama, the word, is because it's so easy to say nama refers to the reality which experiences and rupa is that which doesn't experience. But we can just be repeating. It's not the same as understanding, seeing right now, or feeling right now, or the reality which experiences at this very moment, hearing right now. So the words is not the same as understanding what is real. So that was the main point she was making.
Yes. And she also said that at the moment of experiencing, it conditions the experiencing of reality. Well, of course, if there's sati and panya, I find that very...
I think the it there must refer to panya.
The line before says, because the characteristic of experiencing is there to be learned to know that it experiences. It has to be now. At moment of experiencing, it conditions the experiencing of reality, which is just a little difference, unnoticeable if it is not panya, because it is so natural.
So it's all referring to the experiencing with panya, the understanding with panya. And that's why it's a little different, like reflecting about how it is hardness now. There's a little more understanding, a little more than before, very gradually, even if it's not yet the direct understanding of the reality of hardness at this moment.
I like it a lot because I don't understand it, but I do understand it's important. Yes, thank you for the time.
And then in the sutta, it refers to the understanding of the seka, the trainee, the one that has developed understanding, has no more wrong view, but it's not enough. The defilements have not, the ignorance has not been eradicated, the attachment has not been eradicated. Only the arahat, who fully understands what appears without any ignorance or attachment following, has eradicated all defilements. So it refers to the different stages and degrees of understanding which have to develop. So
and even
I'm not sure.
Understand everything that Tathagata does.
That's right, exactly. But the job has been done for the Arahat, no more to be done, because ignorance has been fully eradicated, even though the wisdom is not of the degree of the Buddhas, the Tathagatas.
I'm not sure if this helps, but I'm thinking now about the three proliferations, Tanha, Mana, and Ditthi. We know that the worldling has all three of them. The uninstructed worldling has all three of them. So after seeing this thinking with attachment, with Mana and with Ditthi, and Sotapanna does not have the Ditthi. So there's thinking with attachment and Mana, and the Arahata has no more Mana and Lopa. So no no papancha, no proliferation. So
No
maybe that's
manyati, no papancha, no
yeah.
more speculating about the existence of anything, because no doubt, no wrong view, no ignorance at all.
And it makes the self and the thinking so small, to keep remembering that there's no understanding because it's so unnoticeable. It's impossible right now to understand. And I notice all the time this I wanting, oh yes, I know what seeing is and what hearing is. So it's, yeah, it's very useful.
And when you say it's impossible to understand, but it depends on panya now, whatever arises now, no expectations at all. Who knows whether a little or great panya will arise, whether there can be enlightenment anytime, like for the lady burning the curry. So whatever arises, the great attachment or the mana or strong dosa or panya, it's unexpected, all by conditions.
So good
no
news
need to think what is possible or impossible, because it's unexpected.
So what Sarah is saying is that rather than think about it will happen or not, understand that it's all up to conditions, that it's all anatha.
Right.
Actually, it's useless to think about when or how much or will it, because that's all just more clinging to the self and the idea of my understanding. So best to just understand what appears now rather than dwelling on what understanding there was rightly or wrongly in the past, or what may occur in the future. What about the hardness now, or the visible object that's seen now, the world at this very moment?
Yes, I'm glad I could bring it up, and it's an important sentence for me because it's so clear. Although it's difficult, it's so clear that the I can't make it happen. Yes.
Jan would add, and it's only clear, the understanding can only be clear when it is the understanding of Vipassana Jnana, which clearly understands the reality experienced. That's why it's not known in the beginning, because it's not clear. And that's why there's doubt and questioning in between. So when it is of the degree that it is directly understanding the reality, moments of satipatthana, then it begins to understand what appears well, but even then not yet clear. So it has to develop on and on.
Yes, we can have these experiences in life, whether it's meditating or just others, and we cling to them as, oh, this was such a special experience, this must be it, or this must be part of it. And it rules it all out now, right? Unnoticeable.
It may have seemed so clear, but now there's the appreciation. It was all wrong understanding, not clear at all. So what may seem clear isn't clear unless it is the really developed right understanding of what appears now. And as Jonathan stressed, it has to be Dhamma, reality, not understanding clearly news. This is a computer or a pen or something.
Yeah, and it's good news because we don't have to get these experiences back or try to.
It's all gone, and no one that experiences anything ever. Nina, did you have anything you wish to bring up today?
Yes, about confidence. I heard a lot of confidence. And Ajahn said that confidence is there to understand the truth, is a condition. But then on the other hand, when there is more understanding, the confidence grows. So I was wondering about this that I was wondering whether Ajahn could add more, which Ajahn is in there, but maybe you can add. So confidence is a condition for understanding the truth, but when there is more understanding, there is more confidence. It grows.
Yes, each is a condition for the other. And as we know, the confidence that the Buddha spoke of was confidence that is based on understanding.
Yeah.
He's not talking about confidence based on a belief or superficial impressions or reasoning or anything like that. The confidence that's based on understanding.
Yes.
And also, confidence is itself a condition for understanding. I think we were discussing this aspect a bit earlier when Shanti's question was being discussed, that if one has confidence that the right cause brings the right result, for example, then one is not inclined to try to get understanding to develop more quickly or to follow certain practices or other, but one is content to let understanding develop of its own accord when the conditions are there. But it needs confidence to have the patience to let understanding develop naturally. So in that way, I think each is a condition for the other.
Yes. Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
If I can add to that, there was a lovely phrase a couple of weeks ago that Ajahn said that the Buddhist has confidence that in sound there's just sound, and in touching there's just touching or what is touched. So sound is sound, it's not a bird. So when we have the idea of bird, it's another reality. So thinking is real, and that's different from sound, and that's different from hardness. So I just like that way that she expressed that the Buddhist has confidence that sound is just sound, and that follows a bit on from what Chanti was saying.
And it's just exactly the same as what is discussed in the Mula Pariyaya Sutta. Sound is understood as just sound, not a bird, not anything. And when she says a Buddhist understands, what is a Buddhist? Actually, if there's no understanding, there is no Buddhist. So she's referring to when there is understanding, when there's true confidence in what the Buddha taught, then it is sound that is heard, nothing else at all. So I think that in the first sentence, Nina mentioned confidence to understand the truth. It's referring to confidence with understanding. So without understanding, there cannot be any confidence in what is true. There cannot be any Buddhist at all.
So you would say that actually most of us are not Buddhists most of the time, because the moments of understanding reality are very rare. In actual fact, in our daily life, it's mostly unwholesomeness. So one can't say one is a Buddhist when one follows the normal desires that we have. It's just at the moment of understanding of what he taught. Yeah.
At a moment of wrong understanding or at a moment of attachment, then the attachment is just attachment, just like any attachment. So what is Buddhist about that? So if there is no understanding now, then there's no appreciation of the Buddha's values. There's no understanding of what the Buddha taught at all.
Alan, you are 1,000,000% right. And mostly, even though we have little bit of understanding, but mostly we are wrong view all the time throughout the day. So we're just like little bit with this, but all the time in wrong view.
Yes, absolutely. And also following on from this, it's something that Jonathan said a couple of weeks ago, that there is no word in the English language for what is seen. And that ties in with the fact that the Buddha's understanding, the object which the Buddha understood, is unique to the Buddha, is unique to Buddhism, that the object of understanding is a reality, not an idea. So that I find quite useful as well. It's the reminder, this fact that there is no word in the English language for what is seen, that Buddhism is unique. It's the understanding is a reality, not the idea about reality. So the intellectual understanding of Buddhism is not the direct understanding of reality. And I think that's an important reminder that Buddhism is unique, that mathematics, philosophy, science has the object of the understanding is never a reality. It's always an idea about reality.
And that's the difference between the understanding of the worldling and the understanding of the Aryan disciple, as pointed out in the sutta that Chanti was referring to. So when it's the worldling's understanding, it's still something that is seen, even though only visible object is ever experienced. So as it says in the sutta, no matter whether there's a Buddha or not a Buddha, whether there's any Buddha's teaching or not, still what is seen is still just that visible object. What is heard is still just sound. So the reality, the experience remains the same. It's the understanding that is different.
For a minute. Thanachan, your mic is off.
Jan's not here today, Hajit.
Oh, okay.
You can see my note that I wrote.
Oh, sorry, okay.
I was wondering, Sarah, because I don't recall the part that Achan mentioned about being Buddhist and having confidence. But I was just thinking, was Achan referring to the confidence that, for example, we're here listening to Dhamma, although there's no understanding all the time, yet we see the value of Dhamma. And I was thinking of Buddha, Dhamma Nusati, and also weak pariyati, which is and there's confidence in both cases. And if this is not the confidence and being a Buddhist that she was referring to.
It depends whether one's just talking generally, but if we're talking in terms of ultimate realities, in truth, actually there's no one to be a Buddhist at all, because there are just moments of right understanding of different degrees and different levels, and moments of ignorance and moments of wrong view. So even for the Aryan disciple that has no more wrong view, still, as you said before, moments of attachment and so on, but no doubt about what is true, what is right, no wrong view at all.
Now, what I'm trying to figure out is this, that is there, some moments where confidence is the driving force when there's panya, but confidence is the one that stands out, that leads one to go further, to listen and understand, and hence get the chance to understand.
Can we say that the more understanding, the more confidence there is in what is true, what is right, what is real at this moment, and the more confidence, the less doubt, the less misapprehension. So in turn, it conditions more understanding, more kusala of all kinds. So as Jonathan said, they develop together. Because there's sada arising with every kusala moment, even for those who've never developed any understanding. There's sada at moments of kindness, at moments of generosity. But we're talking about the confidence with understanding in what is true at this moment.
And actually, that reminds me that the reason I started thinking this way was that I'm not sure whether Achan meant Saddha or Atithana, because lately she's been referring to confidence as Atithana. So I'm not sure what it, in fact, was meant.
If it's recently, it may be referring to Aditana. I agree. If it's not recently, so I'm forgetting whether Nina's referring to what was discussed last week or the week before. That's why, out of context, without the context of the discussion, it's difficult to know. In the end, it's not a name, but the truth that can be understood at this moment.
Shanti, last week I comment your one of your, like what you told about complex, and I gave you the answer that everything is complex, but actually my father corrected me that all Dhamma are straight, they are normal, but they are very deep, mean profound and very subtle. Yeah, that is completely different meaning.
Could you say that again, the last?
All Dhamma means are straightforward, no malab that so much and all that. They are straight, they're truthful to the, but they are all profound and very subtle. It's not that's the meaning that you might want to say.
It's like this, Chanti. Haji used in reaction to something you said. He said Dhamma is complex, and I thought that didn't sound right. So I don't think it's the complex. Actually, the complexity comes from our own akusala that does not understand. It's actually very simple but hard to see. So what I pointed out to him was that Dhamma is simple but hard to see, very deep and profound and subtle.
Yes, and the characteristics are always the same, although we cannot experience them, which doesn't make them complex. I just want to say I'm very happy that you have such a great Dhamma dad to help you. You're very smart as well.
I think I came in at the time and said it's actually the proliferating, the clinging and the wrong view that complicates. For example, what's seen is just that which is visible, but because of the clinging and the wrong view, there's a taking for something and there's a long story about what is seen. So without that clinging and wrong view, it wouldn't be complicated.
I can't hear you, John.
Oh, can you hear me now? Right. Oh, Nina, just getting back to your earlier question or comment about Saddha and Panya as conditioning each other. As explained by Ajahn, I was thinking that as an example of confidence conditioning understanding, it's because of confidence that one joins a discussion such as this, because one appreciates, one knows that association with other people who share the interest in the Dhamma can help one's understanding. And so it may not always be convenient to join the discussion, but out of confidence one does so. And that can be in that way also a condition for understanding to develop, because one has the opportunity to hear and consider the Dhamma in a way that one wouldn't do on one's own.
Yes, yes.
And John, that's the line of thought I had, and I was wondering whether what it was exactly.
When you say wondering what it was, how do you mean?
It means that we are always talking about confidence arising with Panya. So I was wondering that at those moments, was there Panya? What did Panya understand? What level of Panya? Hence, I came with the idea of Dhammanusati, which was reflecting on the Dhamma and a level of understanding that was perhaps where confidence was being developed, and a condition for paying attention to the Dhamma, listening to the Dhamma.
Yes, so the confidence that has been conditioned by Panya, I'm not sure that always has to arise together with Panya, but perhaps it does, I don't know. So I am just speaking in general terms, though, and I don't know about the moment-to-moment realities, whether it has to be associated with Panya necessarily.
Ajahn said the condition for more confidence through the truth, to let go. No me, no I who can do anything. Not trying to concentrate and thinking a lot about it. That's what Ajahn said.
Yes, letting conditions work their way.
Yes.
In other words, the more understanding, the less doubt, the less trying to do something, because the understanding and confidence have developed. So less thinking of following a practice like trying to be aware of visible object now, less clinging on to the object or trying to work out how much understanding there is, for example. Just letting it develop naturally, letting go of the clinging and the misapprehension about what is true and right now.
I wonder whether sometimes I notice when I'm joining the discussions, there's a certain kind of desire to hear useful things. And that would be, so the visiting of these discussions would be, I think, motivated by Loba. And I, at the same time, because the duration is like 2 hours, sometimes the Loba will pass, and then during the discussions, maybe there will be some more useful consciousness to listen to the Dhamma, and then some which will be supportive of understanding. So that would mean that the Loba made me visit the discussion, and after a while, because of these other conditions, the condition of the Dhamma talk will be supportive of understanding.
But Mark, we know that sattva arises only with kusala chittas. It cannot arise with lopa. So if we're talking about confidence, it has to be a moment of kusala.
Yes, I understand, but which puzzles me a little is the reason why I visited the discussion is at that moment motivated by Loba. But that doesn't mean that during the discussion, the Loba is already gone. So maybe another reality appears, which makes me, how to say that, makes it for me possible to understand the Panya in these discussions.
Well, Mark,
that's a bit of a well, it's not so much a puzzle, but it's I think it's something I recognize.
Well, Mark, when you say that you're joining the discussion is motivated by Loba,
sometimes
I think it's not only Loba, of course, because you're saying it's Loba to hear useful things. And for most people, Loba just wants a pleasant sense or object. So, of course, Loba is not totally absent when one necessarily when one wants to join a discussion.
All right, necessarily. Yeah, right.
But there has to be an appreciation of the value of the discussion in the first place, because it's not necessarily a pleasant sensed or experience to join the discussion. There can be moments of, so I think it's just a case of mixed motives, which is the same for all of us, for all the kusala that is performed in terms of like dana and even sila, is probably going to be mixed motives.
Right.
But the kusala moments are there, interspersed with the akusala moments too.
Yes, I think that's true. Thank you. Yeah. It's hard to my perception of reality is always like longer than it really is.
Yes.
So I'm thinking Lobe, which motivates me to hear the discussion, but it takes 2 hours. So there's so many realities in those 2 hours, all conditioned by not only Lobe, but more before.
But we'll never understand the reality by thinking about situations, is what Ajahn always says. We'll never be able to pinpoint and sort it out.
Yes, and that's, I think it's, yes, well, right.
Sometimes
I want to say something about meditation, but I'm not doing it.
It is true, we can speculate as much as we like about the motivation an hour ago for joining the discussion, but what about now? Now is just like then. Now there are moments of seeing, moments of hearing, moments of thinking of attachment, moments of understanding, moments of interest in understanding what is true, moments of interest in other topics. So it has to come back to, it's only this moment that can be understood. Otherwise, it is just speculating about what happened an hour or so ago.
Yes, and it's no use thinking about what one wants to require. It's just, if I want to gain something from listening to this, I know it's Lobe, and it's,
so
yes, I think it's
just what it is.
knowledge.
And sometimes maybe there's relaxation as well. And
moments of Lobe, wishing to understand the point, and moments of interest, seeing the value and considering wisely. And it can only be known when it appears. Otherwise, it's just clinging to the story of my Lobe, my interest, and trying to work it out, not just understanding what appears now. And there's still hardness and sound and other realities that are appearing to be known.
Yes, and what is interesting is that what I notice is that I am all the time listening to what is said and really trying to understand it. And at the same time, when we have this conversation, it seems that this trying to understand is really motivated by Lobe, and I can't help it. It's just happening.
And that's the point. You can't help it. No one can help it when there is trying or wishing.
Yeah, so it's interesting to notice it as well.
Sarah, your sound is unhearable.
Sorry, is that better?
Yes.
We're in a quarantine hotel in Hong Kong, so this is our first time using the equipment, so we've got a few sound issues. So I was just going to say that you're right, that no one can stop trying, no one can make understanding arise, and there are these different dhammas, and there can be understanding even now that it's just the way it is. Is that clearer, Chanti? Can you hear that?
Yes, we can, I think. Shanti can as well.
There was a similar situation to what you were describing, Mark, in the text that Anathapindika, he was the chief lay person of the Buddha. He paid his son to listen to the Buddha. So the son went to listen to the Buddha to earn money, so to enjoy the pleasant things. But after a time, he understood some of what the Buddha was saying and felt ashamed at taking money. So he was there because of attachment, but because at the same time he was listening and understanding, that grew to the degree that he felt ashamed. So that's a bit like what you were describing, I think.
Yes, it is. Which sutta is that?
I don't know, but I do remember that it stood out, and it kind of refers a bit about what Sarah was saying last time, that it's very intricate whether a kusala can condition kusala, wholesomeness can condition unwholesomeness, and vice versa. It's very, very intricate. You never quite know. You might go just for attachment to listen to somebody, but you may understand what they say and understand that attachment. So yeah, it's very intricate, isn't it?
Intricate, what does that mean? Intricate?
Sorry?
What does that mean, intricate?
Intricate means it's subtle the way it develops. You can't just say that kusala just conditions kusala, or wholesomeness just condition wholesomeness. The conditionality is very complicated.
Right.
So yeah, we may have wholesomeness, but then immediately the idea of self is there, which is unwholesome. Or we may be motivated to listen something to get more understanding for ourselves, and then learn actually that's unwholesomeness. So it's very complicated, intricate. Yeah.
Oh, and that's also very useful. There are many times that I think I'm really doing something which is right. I'm really, really, how do you say it? Pleased with myself. But if I realize that it's not me, and it's kusala and akusala and kusala and akusala, I don't have to be very pleased with myself, because it's intermittent. That's gives relaxation as well.
Yes, I think that what
proud
Sarah was saying, that it's this idea of not having to try, that nobody can do anything. Eventually, that can be seen. That's a huge relief. Yes. Because you just get on with life as normal. There's nothing that can be done.
No, not like that. When we saying that not try to do something, and then not try and do, we are just like in the trap, the more complex trap of me, and then more and more actually.
But I think what Alan is saying is that once there's the understanding that there's no self, there's just this moment to understand, then there's no idea of doing or not doing. And that's, I think, what Alan was saying. That makes life a lot easier.
It's a lot easier because we don't, for example, we don't mind where we are. We don't mind who we are with. We don't mind even whether we can have the discussion or not, but we see the value of discussion. If we are able to have it, then we do it. But if we can't have it, we're not so worried about it anymore. And wherever we are, no matter we're in a forest or in a busy Oxford Street, there's still realities there. So it just makes life easier. The more understanding there is of the teachings, the more understanding of anatta, not self-conditionality, that is a relief just to get on with life with a little bit more understanding.
And also I think that it's a relief because the trying is also sometimes very hard. And if we know that the trying, which is hard, doesn't really help us, we can let the hard trying go.
Yes.
So the relief is that without the hard work of trying, we walk on the path to wisdom.
Absolutely, yeah. Trying is the hindrance.
Yes.
Wanting, selecting an object, all of that. Yeah. Enlightenment.
Sorry.
Yeah, results for me. It's all of that is the idea of self, wanting, trying. The more that's got rid of, the more it's easier and more it's a relief not to have that burden of trying to get results, if you like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And less concern about whether there's a little or a lot of panya or a little or a lot of confidence. And that the result of that is less disappointment, less expectation, more acceptance of what is conditioned already, because it can't be any other way. It's just how it is, no matter its attachment now or irritation or understanding or metta or whatever is conditioned. It's just the way it is.
What I find also a very good reminder is that Vedana, when it's pleasant or indifferent, Upekkha Vedana, does not mean that it's kusala. I found that very, I always had the belief when meditating that when I felt good or calm, that it was kusala, but it's not the same thing at all. Vedana and feeling good and being sobana, being kusala at that moment. So again, thinking about it doesn't help at all.
Yeah, Lobha comes with sukha.
Chanti, that's the uninstructed worldling, isn't it? Mistaking what is akusala for kusala.
That's everyone in the earth before hearing Dhamma.
But when it's unpleasant feeling, then it's sure it's akusala.
Or maybe it's how do you say that? Just unpleasant physical feeling is
the
kama or not?
domanassa, because it arises only with dosa.
Yes, but it can also be a result or not?
Domanassa is the mental, and dukkha vedana is only an instant, but it's still Dhamma.
Right, but I thought that if you have a physical unpleasant feeling, then it is just a result. Then it's not necessarily akusala.
Yes, yes.
For example, a painful bodily feeling.
Yes.
So again, we cannot know because even the Buddha had painful bodily feeling, but not akusala arising after it.
And back to your example, Chanti, usually when people say they feel so calm or there's so much calm, usually what is taken for calm is attachment, subtle attachment at least, with pleasant feeling, like when one has a walk in the countryside or one sits quietly on the beach and feels so calm or closes one's eyes. But actually, what about the attachment that's there? So usually akusala is taken for kusala all day long.
But I wonder, is it not because we are saying it's all interspersed, kusala and akusala? Maybe the calmness which you have at the time is also, maybe there's also a lot of kusala.
What kind of kusala? Because
well,
we know there's much
maybe,
more akusala
maybe without
than,
panya, but
like what? At that
Like
time,
sitting down and meditating. I think that's what Mark is referring to.
well, not necessarily, but I always sometimes I just sit on in the woods or on a meadow without meditating. But
and what kind of kusala? What kind of kusala is there at that time? If there's no understanding, what kind of kusala?
Well, it could be kusala without panya, could it not?
Like what?
Like what? just calmness, just upekkha, just sitting.
Because calmness can only arise with kusala. So if at that moment there's no generosity, no giving at that time, or if there is no kindness, no consideration of others, if one's just sitting lost in one's own thoughts, feeling pleasant.
Would there not be generosity towards oneself at that time?
Can there be generosity towards oneself?
I suppose, yes. Doesn't one I'm not sure what you think of it, but if one does metta practice, one says, "May I be happy." So can there not be generosity?
Can there be metta to oneself, thinking about one's own well-being? Is that metta?
What is metta towards another?
The quality of metta is forgetting about oneself and thinking about the other's needs, showing,
yes, right.
having kindness, kind thoughts to the well-being of others.
Who are the others?
Not to oneself.
Who are the others?
Other beings, the ants around, the other people. Like now there can be metta, kindness to others. So the object is the others, not oneself.
Can there be generosity towards this being, my being?
Can you give an example?
Being happy for this being that it's calm on the beach.
Is it generosity or attachment? Being glad for this being, that this being is happy, that I am happy.
Oh, it can be generosity, yes. Happiness as well, but also generosity.
When
there can be compassion towards myself. There can be loving kindness towards myself. There can be caring towards myself.
I think that all our life we have been concerned with being kind and good and compassionate to ourselves, and then we begin to learn that actually it's just clinging to oneself, because the kindness, the compassion,
I don't
to
agree.
others.
I don't agree. There can be compassion towards myself as foreseeing the suffering, being compassionate towards the suffering I'm experiencing now, without I think without too much ditthi.
And Mark, if there was,
it's not necessary we have to agree, but that's what I see.
No, I'd like to consider if there was compassion at that moment, would there need to be compassion towards the being who has compassion?
Yes, when there's suffering, there can be compassion. When there is suffering, there can be metta. When there is difficulty, there can be helping, and that doesn't involve self necessarily.
Actually, the nature of these kusala dhammas, such as sila, dana, metta, karuna, is always the object is always another being, the other being. And
yes, but how is that seen? The other being. If you say there's another being, you have to say there's this being as well, which is ditthi.
No, that so different moments. It's not, there's thinking. There's always thinking in terms of other beings, whether there's understanding or not. It's always there for any living being, any being that is alive, to think in terms of other beings. So during those moments, which not necessarily is a moment of wrong understanding, usually it's thinking with akusala. And we hear from the Buddha that there can be kusala, and the development of those kusalas, such as metta, karuna, dana, sila, etc. So beings being object, there can be kusala and akusala. And I think the point most of the discussion that goes on when we talk about lopa is showing that when most of the day, when we think in terms of beings, we are thinking with attachment. So even when the example you give, that there can be metta towards oneself or karuna towards oneself, what's being said here a lot of times is that those moments are actually moments of attachment.
Well, not necessarily.
What I'm going to say is that love someone else or be kind to someone else. Do you think there's any difference with these? Love?
No, I wouldn't say. No, there's not much difference.
It's not different, you're saying?
Not so much, no.
Why
I
do you
would
say
think not.
I think because Harji's English is not that good, because he may not know that the word love is sometimes used to refer to loving kindness, which is kusala. So what he actually means is that what we in a day take for love, which is like love for our family, love for our friends, is in fact attachment. And this is different from kindness, friendliness. So he's asking you about this.
All yeah. Right. Well, both is akusala. I think that the love you mean for the other and the love for myself is akusala.
Yes.
So there's not much difference.
Kindness to other people and love other people are totally different things. Love is thinking about, it's an attachment thinking for oneself. We may say that we love others so much, mother loves son, father loves son, we can do everything for other people, we can even sacrifice life for the one who loves, but actually all are selfish. The more you love, the more selfish that akusala is, because like the loved one dies, and then we get like very sad and all that, very and the more we love the person who we love died, so much tears come out, very sad, and that's actually not really thinking about anyone else, but it's actually thinking for yourself, where when you have kindness to people and all that, that is like thinking friendly, well, thinking about their welfare, and if anything happened to them, you won't be crying, because it's not an attachment like love, whose love will not lead to sadness and all that.
Yes, I understand. True. But the compassion which I'm talking about towards myself, for instance, is when I find myself being very agitated. I can see the suffering which is going on, and because of that suffering, there can be a sudden sort of relaxation. Seeing the suffering and seeing with the letting go of that akusala, giving me very much a relief and very much calmness. And in my opinion, at that moment, there is metta towards myself, because I can see the suffering, I can see which will be the solution to the suffering, and it will happen, and there will be relaxation, and the suffering will let go. And at that instant, what I experience is the letting go of the self, the letting go of the agitation, the letting go of the loba, and there comes calmness, and there comes upekkha, and there comes
I think,
lots
Mark,
of things.
that is all a preference. And the preference itself is lobha, even if you wish it to be well, to be calm, to let go, not be painful. It's a preference.
No, it's not. It's seeing the suffering. It's seeing the painful feeling, and it's seeing the solution. And it sees that with the suffering comes from lobha or whatever. And at that moment, the lobha relaxes and
well, that's a solution.
There's helping. So it's happening at that time. It's not thinking about it. It's just what is happening. There's suffering, there's seeing of suffering, and there's helping. And that's metta.
And when there's a solution, you're happy about it.
Yes, that's afterwards. But I'm talking about the moment. At the moment, there's seeing of the suffering, and there's letting go of the lobha, and then it relaxes.
And then you're happy.
That's the moment. That's afterwards. That's later.
That's lobha.
That's later. You have to think of the moment, just moment by moment.
Excuse me, Mark. It seems like when you talk about having that kindness to yourself or whatever else, don't you think that this is merely increasing the idea of self rather than decreasing the
Not at that moment.
Self.
Not at that moment.
Sorry?
Not at that moment.
Why not?
Because it's happening. What is seen is suffering, and what is seen is that the suffering is caused by lobha, and what is seen is that when the lobha can disappear by relaxation. I'm talking about that moment, and it's not so much about the person, I think. No, well, a bit, I think.
What is the suffering that you're referring to, Mark? I may have missed it when you mentioned earlier.
There are moments that I'm really wanting something, and that wanting and not getting it is causing suffering. And there can be a realization that suffering is caused by the wanting and by the not getting it. And at that moment, it can relax. So there can be a relaxation of the wanting and the not wanting it. And then it's
is this the suffering of an individual, or is it the suffering as the characteristic of a conditioned reality?
It's a suffering of a being, of me. I think.
And when the Buddha spoke about dukkha as a characteristic of realities, he was talking about something quite different than that. I know you are quoting from the suffering as described in the First Noble Truth, where it mentions being associated with what one dislikes or being separated from what one likes.
No, I'm suffering. I'm saying suffering as unpleasant feeling. So I see what is seen is that there's unpleasant feeling caused by, but can't be lobha, so must be dosa.
And what is the reality at that moment?
I think dosa and dukkha, dosa and dukkha.
When you say dukkha, you're referring to feeling.
Yes.
Right. So it's just feeling, or it's either feeling or dosa. We don't have to characterize it as suffering, because in the development of understanding, it is conditioned realities that are known as they truly are. What you've described is a sequence of events of how when you have
No, I
certain...
think it's seen together. I think what is seen is that there is resistance towards what is happening, and because of that, or at the same time occurring this unpleasant feeling. I think that is what is seen,
Right.
and what is seen is the that the unpleasant feeling comes from the resistance, and at that time there's letting go of the resistance, and I think that is because of compassion.
It's a little bit of a story of things, and
No,
that's
well,
not to say that...
What's also what is seen is also what is visible at that time. It's well, I don't think it's seen at realities at the time, but it's very apparent.
Right. But my point is just that we need to distinguish between these kinds of observations on the one hand that you're describing, and the moments of awareness and understanding which see the true nature of a presently appearing reality, because only the latter is the development of the path taught by the Buddha.
Well, I think we started the discussion by saying whether there was whether it was possible to have when sitting, being calmness on the beach, which is for a big part is loba, because it's desirable, and we're sitting being happy on the beach. And I thought that at that same time there also may be kusala chittas, because it's just so the loba bit is akusala, but perhaps there's also kusala at that time. And then we went on discussing whether it was possible to have compassion towards oneself. And I think because of that situation which I just explained, I think it's possible. And I experience when sometimes when there is unpleasant feeling, it's apparent that it's caused by dosa, and it's apparent that there seems to be compassion towards that situation, and the dosa just dissolves because of that insight in the two things being together, because it's seen that the unpleasant feeling comes from dosa, and seeing that makes the dosa disappear. And
but thinking about
seems
seeing,
like compassion.
Thinking about seeing is not what is
it's
reality. It's thinking.
No, it's not. But it's not thinking. It is seen. At that moment, it is seen. It's not with words. It is seen that the resistance causes unpleasant feeling. It's together, and it is seen. It's seen. Not thinking about seeing. It is seen that the resistance is there and the unpleasant feeling is there. And at that time, it is. What happens is that the resistance is let go, and what happens is that the unpleasant feeling goes as well. And talking about it now, that's thinking. But at that moment when it's happening, it's not thinking.
But didn't we start today?
It's not really possible for us to say whether which moments are kusala. Not only the individual themselves can know at the time, and only then if the difference between kusala and subtle akusala is already known by understanding, is it possible to be sure which of those moments you describe are kusala and which are
yes, and I agree with you that probably there's akusala and there's kusala all at the same time, but the result seems to be that the suffering disappears.
Right. But suffering doesn't.
Which seems to be
in the
good
Buddha's
thing.
teaching, suffering doesn't disappear. Suffering is there to be known at every moment, and the more
Well,
there are different kinds of suffering. But I'm just bringing it back to the development of understanding, as taught by the Buddha. That the more understanding is developed, the more apparent the unsatisfactory nature of realities becomes known. So in that sense, you could say that the seeing of suffering increases as understanding is developed, but it's not suffering in the sense that we are accustomed to talking about it. It is the dukkha as the unsatisfactoriness of the conditioned nature of realities.
Yes, but we were also talking about karuna, and we say, or metta, which is helping the other being. And why are we helping the other being? Because I think to reduce their suffering, which is, I suppose, the suffering, not so much in the, which could you say it's the more conventional suffering, I think.
Well, for us, it's because that's our level of understanding. But for the Buddha, his compassion was towards the ignorance and wrong view of the world. And that was the condition for his deciding to teach, not the kind of suffering that you and I perceive in other beings. So it's all a matter of the level of understanding.
But isn't also when we started today, the fact that if there is understanding without words or whatever, it is unnoticeable. We wouldn't know.
Well,
that's just a little difference. We wouldn't know, and we cannot say that we absolutely know this caused that, and that there was thinking in image or without words. We wouldn't know. Panya is not noticeable.
But
well, maybe not so much as a reality, but I still I do think I notice something about
you think
the causes of my life.
I think what you're saying is that the kind of moments of reflection that you're talking about are useful moments. Whether they are moments of understanding as taught by the Buddha is another matter.
Yes, well, all right, yeah. But when I had the situation I described, when I notice resistance and I notice unpleasant feeling, and something happens and it goes away, I would think that there must be some panya involved there.
And what about all the other?
If I would persist in the resistance and in the suffering at that time, I think there would be.
You know that the dosa is just not replaced by lopa.
Sorry.
The only way you can know that is with understanding. So as John was saying, as understanding develops, you will have a greater understanding of what these different emotions that you might be feeling, and that maybe it's not compassion that you're feeling, but rather lopa.
I think it's compassion.
And no matter what we
only understanding will let you know for sure.
Yes, and I noticed it.
And if there's unpleasant feeling now, no matter whether we're sitting on the bench or in the discussion, it's just a Dhamma. It's not my unpleasant feeling. It's not anyone's unpleasant feeling. It's just a Dhamma. And what is most precious is understanding. And it's gone instantly. It's of no significance. Usually there's more interest in unpleasant feeling because one would like to get rid of it. But what about pleasant feeling too now? It's also just a Dhamma that passes. So the understanding right now is what is most precious, and this can be any time, any place.
Yes.
Mark, I just wanted to be clear. I understand that you're making the distinction between compassion and having beings as object and their suffering particularly, and that suffering is not the suffering that is the first noble truth. You're simply talking about unpleasant mental and physical feelings, the suffering as in that. But I would like to be clear, make sure that because you seem to be associating compassion with alleviating the suffering, I wonder if that's your understanding that compassion must result in alleviating suffering. Otherwise, it's not compassion.
Well, I think it's the objective. It doesn't really. It's not necessary that the suffering will end, but I think the objective is that the suffering will end.
And because what I'm thinking now is that perhaps you are thinking in terms of your own experience that there has been the result of suffering having been alleviated or disappeared, and you go back to think that that must be the work of compassion. If whether
Yes.
this is okay, so there you have it. I mean, you are thinking there is no actual understanding of compassion itself, whether it's compassion or not, but you are just having an estimation based on the idea that because the suffering has been alleviated, that it must be compassion, right?
Well, it goes to the what happens is that it's together with a certain insight. What is seen is the how do you say that? The relationship between the resistance and the unpleasant feeling that is seen. So it's also panya, and because it is seen. Then maybe it's without compassion. Maybe it's just panya. That can be true as well. Maybe it's just panya. Can be it as well.
Anyway, I just wanted to make sure that you understand that compassion is simply having a being. Right now, I'm not going to go along, talk about whether it can have oneself as an object or not, but just simply that compassion is having the suffering of a being as object, right? That you understand. And it arises and it can be just one moment and fall away completely, not to be followed by any action.
So you say that the compassion object of compassion is a being.
The suffering of a being.
Suffering of a being.
A being
so in that case,
experiencing
it would be,
suffering. Yeah.
So that case, it would be Panya sees that this being, me, is suffering because of resistance and because of resistance and unpleasant feeling.
Not necessary Panya. It's simple. It's a kusala that is not necessarily associated with Panya. Compassion simply sees another being suffering, but it must be kusala. And it easily we have pity, which is in fact dosa. And I say compassion is very rare comparatively. That is one thing we need to distinguish also. But simply that compassion has another being experiencing some kind of suffering as object. That's all.
But what I understand is that it's not possible to have compassion for this being, for one, the being.
Not as I understand, as Sarah understands, as Haji understands, as John understands, Chanti understand, right, that this being cannot be the object of compassion.
Right. Right. And isn't it in the Intl.Dhamma that there's a sort of meta exercises? How do you say that? May I be happy? May I be?
Yeah. That's a reminder that the other being, like you, wants to be happy.
that's a reminder that the other one.
Reminder, right.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, the thing is, what if I this being is well, it's complicated. It goes too far. I will reflect on it.
Go ahead, Maeve.
It's really just an observation. Mark, earlier in the discussion, we were talking about how problematic it is when we try to understand. I actually think it's also problematic when we try to make other people understand. And I think that can happen through an effort to, I suppose, share what has been understood in oneself, etc.
Could you pass that, Tanji?
It usually doesn't. I mean, it's it's where the effort to change someone's view of things, I think, usually brings about that person having to be more emphatic. And I actually like the way you've explored your thought processes and the story that's involved and all of that, because in some ways that's how we do arrive at an understanding when we see that in the context of what the Buddha taught. But I also appreciate that it can be very difficult when perhaps we're trying to be persuaded to see things differently, when in actual fact we're speaking from our experience, our present existing experience, which may not align with someone who understands more or has reflected over a long time, etc. I don't think we can be argued into understanding. So I think it's actually, in a sense, you have to be your own defense and prosecutor. If you know what I mean. It's like,
yes, I do.
You're the one in the end who has to detect where it is that there is not the clarity and precision that leads to understanding, and that, as we say again and again, it just takes time and patience, but actually by unraveling what we believe and we think and observe, I think is helpful in terms of just examining it just at an intellectual level. So I found it interesting the way you've been describing what has happened for you and what you're thinking about. So it's really just an observation.
Thank you. Well, the thing is, of course, what we are doing a lot of the time in the, how do you say this, is the forum? I don't know, on the internet, and what we're talking about, how do you say it? What is happening? There's my view, it's my understanding of reality, and there's the view and the understanding of reality of the other people, and they are not the same. So all of us, I think, if we are talking together. So what we also do here in this group is sort of have the Buddha and the scriptures as a reference to
exactly.
To our own understanding.
Exactly. Yes.
And the thing about it is that also we have to, if we that has only meaning if we have a certain estimation of the wisdom in the scriptures. Do we think everything which is written in the scriptures is true, or maybe some of it is not. And do we understand what is written? We can explain it in different ways. So it's a sort of, for me, the adventure is that, comparing all that together and see, well, that's I think the reflecting bit.
Exactly.
And that's very, very interesting and insightful, I think.
And Mark, as you mentioned about the scriptures, I believe in the Visuddhimagga, it explains that when it mentions about extending metta to oneself, actually it refers to taking oneself as an example, like having metta towards other, like considering others like oneself, something like that.
All right.
Yes.
Well, the thing is that I do metta meditation. And for me, when I do metta meditation, it's sort of you have to listen carefully, and also letting go of some of the convictions you have. But what I do is, I will describe what I do. What I try to wake up in myself the loving kindness towards myself. So it's waking up a kind of mind which is how do you say that? It's open to good things. Well, it's hard to say. It's hard to say in English.
Yes, but it also says that there cannot be such thing as metta to oneself, and the reason is it's very easy to confuse between attachments and metta. And actually, when you talked about your experience, I can relate to what I experienced before when I was doing meditation. Very much similar. And at the time, I thought also it was a compassion to myself, something like that, because we had such ideas from different sources. But the more I study, with Ajahn and other friends, the more I realized that actually there are a lot of thinkings about, and actually we mix up so many things in those kind of experiences because of not enough understanding. And so just a couple of things to share to you.
Yes, thank you.
And Mark, I think you have probably heard, since you've read some things about metta, as Tom just now reminded us, that the near enemy of metta is attachment. Yes, I find that very insidious when it comes to daily life, our attachments to friends and families that make it hard to see that it is akusta, because it is, and yes, no metta in a day, just a lot of attachment. So same thing when if there's no understanding to see the difference, when what we take for metta for oneself may be attachment, and just because there's no understanding, one thinks that it's the real thing when it's not.
Maybe also it's not a good point to start from I, because, well, if we start from anatta, it's not a very good point to start from I can or cannot have karuna, isn't it? Or metta, because we start from the wrong foot. And also maybe it's a thing to consider that it's one of the ditthis, the Sakaya ditthis, the personality view, and just maybe consider that if there is such a view, or in Dutch an opvatting, then there's blindness and conviction, and maybe just take that into account, that it could be, not even be sure, but question it.
Jotika still there? Maybe Jotika can say something if she wants to.
If I may say something, I mean, a remark to what Chanti just said. Chanti, although you said in the beginning to start with oneself, probably you mean that to point out only that part. But I'd just like to remind you that there can be development of metta and karuna even amongst people who don't have any understanding. So invariably, there can be a self-view before and after those moments. So people may have ideas about me developing metta and yet have metta, their metta is growing. So it's not necessary that the idea of self cannot go hand in hand with the development of metta and karuna.
Yes, because kusala and akusala are interspersed.
No, we're talking about the path. We're talking about the path that when it comes to the development of wisdom, the self-view is a direct obstacle to the development of wisdom, of right view. So when we think like we can do something in order to make wisdom arise, that's definitely wrong. It cannot be right. So that wrong, that akusala, is in that regard not the akusala that can arise, that does arise in between moments of other forms of kusala, like metta, bhavana, and all that. That akusala, that wrong view is actually taking you in the wrong direction. But the wrong view that arises in between the development of jhana, for example, is not an obstacle in that way.
I think that what we can say is that just as we don't like to feel agitated or have unpleasant feeling or difficulties or wrong view, it's the same for others. So if we see someone else is suffering, as you mentioned, Mark, if a child has fallen over or someone has unpleasant feeling, there can be kindness, wishing the other to be happy or helping with compassion. And the one with the greatest understanding, the Buddha, had the greatest metta and compassion to anyone, regardless, but not thinking of himself, but thinking of the needs of others. So helping to teach the Dhamma and helping in every way because of the great wisdom and wishing others to be relieved from suffering of all kinds through the understanding of the path. So actually the development of these qualities is the forgetting of oneself and the kindness and compassion for the well-being of others, no matter here or there or anywhere on the beach or in the discussion.
Mark, you invited Jotika to come in. I think she's ready to speak.
All right, please.
You want to say anything, Jotika, or not? Can't hear you, Jotika.
Well, I have a lot of questions too.
I was wondering what your view was, Jotika, if you want to.
I don't if I can understand that there is no one to be, no one to do anything, how to, then it's also not possible to wish, I think. And I have a difficulty with understanding if I can not do it to myself, how can I do it to others?
Yes.
Because being is no being, is it? Or we have to go to the conventional language and say we do everything in conventional language. That's what I did. And then knowing it is not so, but it's so tricky.
All deeds are citas with Chaitanya.
Yeah, for sure. But there is also no one who can wish that the cheetahs and the chaitas are with this or with that or whatever. You cannot develop it, I think, if I understand. It is because of the conditions, and
Yes.
then and the conditions are still. I hope I can do something with the conditions, but I know that is also all personal thinking again.
There can be understanding even now that it's just thinking of I doing something,
Thinking, yeah.
like different from moment of kindness, different from moment of understanding. So no matter what the topic, it comes back to this moment. So now moments of agitation, moments of kindness, moments of understanding, but they're just different dharmas which arise and fall away. But the understanding can develop even now, because they're seeing now, there's hearing now, different dharmas. Each one gone, each one anatta, as you said. And when there's thinking about it all being unclear and this and that and many questions, it's just moments of thinking, not my agitation or my lack of clarity, just different dharmas to be understood here and now. So that is the letting go that comes with understanding, just letting go of what one's so concerned about or the long story about this or that situation.
But my heart is with you, Mark. In this struggle to understand something. But it doesn't help to struggle with the understanding, I think. It's just to letting go, isn't it?
Yes, I think it's true. Yes. Which is not very easy. And one can't do it. It just has to happen or not.
It's very dangerous. If I look back on my experience, to link things and think that there is a link, because we don't know. It can just be vipaka at that moment, and then because it happened like that, there's a lot of I don't know the word, bijgeloof. That
superstition.
Because yes, things appear to happen that way, that they are linked, but there's not necessarily one. It's again a story.
John Lennon said, life is what happens when you're making other plans.
And the main point is it's always just this moment. And the difficulty or the disturbance is just the thinking with aversion now, different from moments of thinking with kusala or understanding. Just before we finish, I just want to remind anyone who came later that there's no discussion next Saturday. The next discussion will be in 2 weeks' time.
Thank you
Mr.
very much.
Jan will be busy next week. So we will see everyone same time in 2 weeks' time. That is on the 18th of June. But the Monday discussion will be held as usual, but no discussion next Saturday.
I wondered whether is
today-
there a reference in the text that where it says that there's not possible to have metta to oneself, because I would like to read that.
I think, Mark, it depends, like with everything else, it depends how one reads the text. Like
Right.
as Sukin and Tam was saying, the Buddha gives oneself as an example, like just as I would like to be happy, so would others, as an example to help one consider the welfare of others, the benefit of showing kindness to others, just like I don't want to be the receiver of bad speech, others don't either. So what about speaking kindly and helpfully to others, just as we would like to receive kind and helpful speech, just as others don't want to receive bad looks. just as we don't like to receive bad looks, others don't. So smile and show kindness to others when one has the opportunity.
But Sarah, also,
but it's not so much. Oh, sorry.
Did the Buddha also say that to Rahula develop metta that will diminish dosa? I thought.
And isn't it true? Like when there is metta to others, when there is kindness, no dosa at all, because there cannot be dosa with metta.
But it seems then as if Rahula can do it. It sounds.
So we have to remember all dhammas are anatta, no matter what we read where.
Yeah.
No one that can do anything. Perhaps we can continue this in 2 weeks' time. I'll make a note of it and we can bring it up because it's a good topic.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.
Thank
bye.
you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Hello,
See you in 2
everyone.
weeks' time.
Bye.
Trust.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, Sarah.
Um,
Thank you, Jonathan.
Bye, Sita.
Have a
Bye-bye,
nice-
everyone.
Bye-bye. Have a
See you in
nice
2 weeks'
weekend.
time.
Dag Nina.
Bye-bye. Have a nice weekend, everyone. Thank you.
See you, Gabby.
Thank you, Johan. Dag Mark.
Dag Jyotika.
There was a reason he asked you for support, Jyotika. We bring it up next time.
I don't know, but it was all the time in this thing. Then I thought I understand so far, I understand, and then I do not agree. I agree, but it is also all this
All
thing.
just thinking
But
and all gone.
but
See you
you
next
are.
time, Jyotika and Mark. We'll continue.
Thank you
on.
very much.
Bye-bye.
Heb het goed, Mark ook, hè?
Yeah, yeah.
Nice to see you, Intl.Dhamma. Have I said it correctly?
You see?
I'm
Sorry.
talking to another member there,
Yeah.
Intl.Dhamma. Hello.
Yes.
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
Nice to see you.
Yes.
I saw
My
you
question
posted a
was,
question.
I have put the one question on the chat box. I have put one question on the chat box to Mr. Mark.
I saw that, but no one picked it up, I'm afraid. I wasn't able to, I didn't quite understand your single question, so I wasn't able to put it to him. But I did make a note of your question from the last time about the 4 conditions.
Yeah.
And I'll put that up on the discussion list to see if someone has any comments to make.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's all right.
See you next time.
Maybe next time. Yeah.